In this screencast, I'm going to show you the basics of working with M files, anonymous functions, and user-defined functions in Matlab. First, we're going to talk about script files. They're also known as M files in Matlab. These are analogous to macros in Excel and VBA. You can create a file with a .m extension using the Matlab editor. This is useful a lot of times when you have commands that you're running over and over and you want to store them somewhere. And then you can just run the M file script by typing its name in. So I'm going to go through an example here related to the van der Waals equation, which is shown here. And let's say you work a lot with air. You have A and B, which are just values in this van der Waals equation. We have R as the gas constant. We have temperature, volume, and N is the number of moles, and you want to calculate the pressure that that amount of moles at that volume and temperature exerts. So let's go into the Matlab command window. I'm going to go up here on the upper left, and I'm going to create a new script. And this brings up the Matlab editor. So I've typed this in. You notice I have comments here, which I can denote with a percentage sign. And I've got the gas constant, I've got A and B. And now what I can actually do is I can save this. And you have to make sure that your directory is set to the location that you want your file to be saved in. And I'm going to name this setup VDW air. Now I can close the Matlab editor, go back to the command window, and if I write in setup VDW air, it actually runs those commands, and you notice here on the right it stored R gas, A, and B, which I defined in the M file. So now that I've got this set up, I can type in things like the volume, temperature, and number of moles. And then finally I can type in an equation for the pressure. Again, notice that R gas, A, and B came from our setup VDW air script, and when I press enter, it calculates a pressure to be 1.1 to the fifth, and that would be in units of pascals. So that's a basic script file, and I'm actually going to refer back to this example in a few moments. But first I wanted to just introduce functions. There are a couple different types of functions. There are the built-in functions to Matlab, and then there are things called anonymous functions and user-defined functions. An anonymous function is one that you can define straight in the Matlab command window. I'm just going to define a very simple anonymous function, and I'm just going to call it Charlie is equal to, and then I have an @ sign, and what the @ sign does is it tells Matlab that you're defining a anonymous function. I'm going to make this a function of x, and then it's just going to be x squared plus 5. And when I press enter, it echoes that and says, okay, you've got this anonymous function. It's a function only of x, and the function is x squared plus 5. So then if I type in Charlie of 3, it's going to calculate 3 squared plus 5, so that should be 14. It's not going to be stored permanently, but if you're working with a particular equation a lot in one session in Matlab, then it's nice to declare or design these anonymous functions. And when I clear, it's actually going to clear the history of that Charlie function. We want to use Matlab to create a user-defined function. We have a spherical tank. We want to know, depending upon the height in the tank, what volume of liquid remains in that spherical tank. I have an equation here for the volume as a function of height. The radius is fixed, and we want to create a function in Matlab. The first step is to create a new script here. I then type in the equation, so I have volume equals sphere tank, so the name of my function is sphere tank. It has two arguments, radius and depth. Volume, I could have put anything there, it's just the output of this function. Pi is defined in Matlab. You'll notice I have these dot multiply. I'm not necessarily doing item by item, but I want this function to be capable of doing item by item, so I could do the function on a vector of inputs. And I have a semicolon here to suppress the output. I can save this as a new file. So I'm saving this as sphere tank. The default when you save is actually the name of the function. Now I'm going to go back to Matlab and I can type in sphere tank. So the radius of 5 and the height is 1, and this will tell us that we have 14.7 cubic meters still left in the tank when there's a height of 1 meter.